Welcome, welcome, and buckle up, lovely listener, because today we are getting woo-woo without the cuckoo. That is, in fact, the tagline of my guest today, Lori Dyan. She is the author of the instant bestseller, Burn Your Shit, The Life-Changing Magic of Ritual. Lori is a member of the Peguis First Nation from Cree and Ojibwe descent, and she leads rituals and does tarot and moon ceremonies informed by her Indigenous heritage, but also reflecting her signature humor and storytelling, which, dude, I think you're going to absolutely love. In this episode, we are going to learn why ritual is so important, even if you aren't particularly spiritual. You're going to learn a beautiful menopause ritual that actually made me a little bit weepy. We're going to learn how burning your shit can help you release things. And that is not as magical woo-woo as you might think. We talk about the difference between rituals and habits and how you can design your own meaningful rituals with as much or as little woo-woo as you want. We're also going to talk about the difference between goal setting and manifesting and the difference between woo-woo and cuckoo. Here's Lori.
Breaking news. Your dream life isn't going to happen because you made a vision board. You're going to need goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. This podcast is about getting clarity on what you want, having the grit to do the actual work, and most importantly, constantly training your brain to be your bitch. Ready to be inspired? Here is your host, best-selling author, Una Duncan.
All right, my friends, we've got Tarot Lori with us. Lori, thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, let's get right into it. I binge read your book this weekend, and I have so many questions for you. But first of all, let's set the stage a little bit for listeners. Tell us right off the bat, why is ritual so important?
Rituals are what weave together the fabric of humanity. We bonded and protected each other and built societies around rituals. And the reason that they persist thousands of years later are because they work. They are a way for us to connect to our communities, to connect to the divine, to connect to ourselves. So there's something that we always do. You know, when it's banging the pots out on the balcony during COVID, that was a ritual. Doing your skincare can be a ritual. Doing your taxes can be a ritual, or your budgeting. I mean, any habit or routine that you infuse with loving intention is, or even just intention, because I mean, taxes are a bit, I don't know how loving it can be, but anything that you're infusing with that intention or that you're attributing significance to can become a ritual. And then it can become something that grounds you. It's very personal to you, and it can have a real impact on your life.
What if we don't identify as spiritual, though? Are rituals are they always a little bit magical woo-woo-y?
Absolutely not. You've blown out a birthday candles on your birthday cake, you're doing a ritual. Bachelorette party, ritual. Book club, ritual. Poker night, ritual. It's when you are, whether you're on your own or with others, and you are performing an action that is something that has, like I said, intention. You're doing it for a reason. It's internally motivated. You know, when one person runs out of their house to get to work and grabs a coffee every morning at Starbucks, like that can be considered a ritual if you think about it, because it's something that you rely on, and it's something that kind of just lets you know, okay, it helps you land in the moment that you're in. I'm going to work. I'm preparing for work. When I wrote my book, it was like I had my writing socks on, and I had my special tea that I drank, and I had my, I'd have little things around. So that's not necessarily, there's nothing spiritual about any of this. I mean, for my thing, maybe a little bit, but the poker night's not spiritual usually.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you about the poker night, because I was like, whoa, is that a ritual? Like what makes it a ritual versus just something that one does?
Yeah. Often we're kind of doing rituals and we don't realize it. That's the thing. But for something like a poker night or a girls' night, when you're gathering together and you are coming together for a common purpose. And let's say it's poker night, you always get together, and no matter whose place you're at, someone brings out the snacks, and then you sort of have a little bit of like catching up beforehand. And then there's the funny jokes here and there. And it's just that thing. It's like, it can be Thanksgiving dinner for people too. I mean, it can be different things, that there are certain ritualistic aspects. It's something that it's not necessarily like the entire experience, the entire event is like one big stinking ritual, but there are ritualistic aspects to it for sure.
Got it. Okay. So this is what I'm thinking of it as, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong. I'm thinking of it, it's just like the loose structure of our behaviors, or what we do. So even when we get on Zoom, there's a certain, like, everyone, is everyone here? Are we like, and then we have like a little structure of a meeting.
Protocol. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just kind of what prevents us from descending into chaos. Is that too much to say that about rituals?
Not really. I mean, kind of there, and the science. I mean, the book I wrote, I did a lot more research than I anticipated, because I just started looking up, just some information to substantiate some anecdotes that I was putting in, or to say like, oh, I wonder if this has ever been proven. And then I would go in these deep dives about all of these, the science and the psychology behind ritual. If you knock a table 3 times every time you eat a carrot, there have been studies to prove that carrot will taste better than someone who just eats the carrot. Like,
and it's because
like it's wild.
You're just training your brain to be like, it's carrot time. We're going to pay attention to the carrot. Is that why it tastes better? Because you're just present?
It's like, it's kind of in a weird way, like, and it's just to sort of really simplify it. It's very much like your brain is like, ooh, okay, it's carrot time. This is serious because we did the knock, like, and it's a thing that's happening that you're not consciously aware of. It's kind of like when when people are doing wine tasting, they do the whole swirling of the glass and the smelling and the I mean, part of that is, sure, it releases the ambrosia of the drink and but it is also activating something in your brain that is saying, oh, this is important. Churchill, was it Churchill? Yeah, I think it was Churchill, used to sit in his bed every morning and would like have some booze, like whiskey or something, and do his morning papers and stuff before he even got out of bed every day at and then at noon he would get up. I think it was Benjamin Franklin, who would do what he called it, like air bathing, which is basically sitting naked at his desk by an open window, doing his morning work, and that's just his thing. Great. Someone else doing their skincare routine at night, or hopping in a bath, that can be super ritualistic when you put in the Epsom salts. You don't have to be throwing in essential oils and crystals in the tub. And I give a lot of detail about what crystals to maybe not throw in the tub, because not all of them like water, and certain aromatics are not good for your private parts. So don't be throwing those in the water. But they can activate something in our brain. A lot of the rituals we do interact with the vagus nerve and activate your parasympathetic nervous system. They take you from that place of fight, flight, freeze to a place of rest, digest, create, strategize. It just like calms you the F down.
Yeah, which we all need.
Yes,
so I was reflecting on rituals that, and you just really expanded my idea of what rituals are, but I was reflecting on the rituals as I kind of understood them. And I feel like some of them are maybe not dying, but they're getting really, they're changing. So for example, weddings now are usually, in my world anyway, much more simple than they used to be. Funerals in my world aren't even called funerals anymore. They're always celebrations of life. So are you noticing that certain cultural rituals are starting to shift? And why do you think that is?
Absolutely they are. And I think they're responding to the time. One thing that's interesting, and coming back to the banging the pots and pans out on the balcony during COVID, we were, even before COVID, with the, how connected we are through social media and through our phones, we're more connected than ever before. And we have never been more disconnected from each other, from ourselves, from a energy greater than us. And rituals are what bring you back to that. That's why we crave them and we need them. And that's why, I've got goosies just talking about it. Both of my kids had graduation ceremonies during COVID, and the schools went through to such put out so much effort trying to make it special, even though it was a drive-through, graduation ceremony, and my son showed up with like mismatched socks and Crocs and his shorts, and it was just like, hey guys, it was still there had to be some ceremony to it, because that is a marker, that and so many of these rituals that we do are markers of milestone moments in our lives, like getting married, having a baby, grieving someone dying. We need those experiences, and often they are shared experiences, to help us emotionally, energetically, spiritually pass through that threshold into that new state of being.
And do you think they are shifting and needed more than ever because we are so increasingly disconnected from each other and from a higher power?
100%. And I think it's funny because some rituals sort of harken back to times gone past, like women gathering, women's circles. I mean, there's a whole chapter in the book on the power of women in particular gathering. And we crave that community, particularly with other women. And you can trace, that back to the moon lodges. You can trace that back to ancient Greece. There were these secret societies of women who would gather. Men just weren't allowed. They didn't know what was going on in there. And that's a lot of what happens too. Sometimes it's, disguised as a book club or a Tupperware party or, some MLM thing, but we are being brought together because we need to be together. And so in those ways, it's kind of going back to olden times or hearkening back to an earlier time. And then there are other rituals that just evolve as we evolve. People will find ritual whether they are consciously doing it or not. More often than not, it's unconscious, which is why this book, I think, is resonating with people, is because it's bringing it into plain view so that you can then cultivate your own rituals or think about rituals differently in a way that can really have maximum impact, that can increase your performance, that can decrease your stress, that can make you just feel more like whole and human and at your best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And participating intentionally in your life and your transitions. And it's funny because I'm also noticing that our culture is creating new rituals or there's gaps and people are creating their own. So for example, gender reveal parties, right? Like this is kind of a newish thing. Also there's a lot more graduation ceremony. Like people are posting their baby's kindergarten graduation, their grade 1 graduation. There's more of those sort of acknowledgements as we go. And it makes me feel like as we are, I think, increasingly secular, we're losing some of the old first communions. And can't even name any of the old religious things that I don't know about. And so we're sort of inventing new things to say, hey,
absolutely. And to your point earlier, there is definitely, every religion is steeped in ritual. So absolutely, there are rituals in religion and they can be extremely spiritual. But we are, and because I think what's happened over the past, 10 years or so as well, is that a lot of people are losing faith in institutionalized faith. They're losing faith in organizations, institutions, churches, and we still need ritual. That vacuum is there. And so we're doing it with our chosen people, or we're doing it, and culturally, we're not all, living with our families and generations living together as often as it was in the past, for a lot of people. So, those gaps are there that need to be filled. And that's why, some of it, like the gender reveal of it all and stuff, I think so much of that, again, with the social media and whatnot, that becomes kind of like Valentine's Day, where it's like, all right, who's benefiting from this,
Yeah, totally. Well, that's the next thing I want to ask you is the kind of commercialization of ritual, like corporations stepping in to fill that void, like you mentioned, the Starbucks ritual.
100%. But again, you can make a beautiful cup of tea in a mindful way in the morning, and that can be your ritual as well. And it has to suit where you are in the moment. It has to fill a need or scratch an itch. But however that ritual works for you. For instance, in the morning, I always start my day with, a glass of water and some movement of some kind, some conscious breath and some journaling. And sometimes that is all taken care of in like under 10 minutes because I don't have time for all this. And other times I'll be able to sort of luxuriate in it and take a little longer, but it just makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, okay, I can start my day now when I've done at least a couple of those things, if not all of them. And even when the commercialization is happening and, people are shooting off like pink rockets into the sky, just as many people, I think, are having beautiful baby blessing ceremonies or mother blessing ceremonies that are incredibly personal and specific to that person. And I've been to both, and, beautiful. Either way, you're celebrating that person, and we're celebrating that moment in someone's life. Again, it's the marker.
This podcast is made possible by Fit Feels Good, my online fitness and nutrition company. Here's what we do.
Okay, so before the MFA, I was a lot heavier. I kept having to buy bigger and bigger pants, and it was depressing to me. So I tried the 28-day transformation. I lost 10 pounds, and I felt pretty good. I signed up for the MFA, and now I've lost more than 40 pounds. I have so much more energy. I feel like myself again, which is a really nice way to feel. If anyone is considering signing up, I just say do it. It's the best investment in myself and my happiness and my longevity and my health.
Yeah, you give some beautiful examples of alternate kind of celebrations and ceremonies that people could consider.
Yeah.
I wonder if you would be generous enough to share one about menopause, because I know that would really interest my audience.
I mean, yes. And for menopause, there are so many women coming together and doing like a circle, getting together to gather and almost like a birthday but it's each woman going around and speaking words of tribute to honor the woman who is being celebrated for crossing through this threshold. Other women will go I went and got boudoir photos taken by a friend, and it was amazing. Didn't print a single picture out, but guess what? It was the experience of it. It was getting my hair done professionally and my makeup and being with a trusted person I knew to take those pictures. And it was very tasteful. Everything, there was draping, there was no it was more
not, whatever does it for
exactly.
you.
But for me, it was more tasteful draping than penthouse, but y'all do you. But it was just that celebrating of me and that power. So that was a very personal thing that no one else was involved in. And women will go and, take a trip by themselves or go do, whether it's a yoga retreat or an outdoor bound kind of thing or something that challenges them. Just like younger kids would often have those feats of strength, those rites of passage around 13, 14. Both of my kids did these backcountry canoe trips where they were zero communication with the outside world for it was 3 weeks for my daughter, 5 weeks for my son.
Whoa.
And yeah, they were
how old?
13.
But guided with other kids?
No, wait, 14. Wait. Sorry, 14. They were guided by older teenagers who had been through this program. It was in way North Ontario, and they came back very changed, just so mature and so in themselves, knowing who they were. And they would then go through, it was right before they entered high school. So they would have been 13, 14. It was well, it can't be as hard as being in the bush for 5 weeks without a toilet or a phone. I mean, how hard can this be? That's the kind of thing that a rite of passage will do for a younger person. It tests them. And then they discover that resilience within themselves. So that's a ritual. That's the power of ritual. And for a woman who is entering menopause or just going through that transition in life, just being able to even light a candle for every year that you've been alive and to just think about, just focus on that candle in that year and just see all these lights around you and write a letter to your younger self, when things changed, and then write a letter from the point of view of your younger self to you today and what she wishes you knew that she knows about you,
Lori, get a little weepy here.
Listen, when I did it, I was catatonic on the floor, in fetal position. It can be incredibly powerful. So whether you're gathering with a bunch of babes and howling under the full moon naked, or you're crying to yourself, writing a letter to the younger you, marking the moment is important because it is just as significant in terms of a life moment as the rite of passage into puberty and adolescence. It's that exiting from that stage, and that's worth marking. And also it's acknowledging the wisdom that's been earned, the lessons that have been learned, and the power that comes with not giving. Can I swear on this podcast? Or better not to. Not giving a fuck what anyone thinks and not worrying about asking for permission. You liberate yourself through a ritual like that around menopause.
Yeah. You're just reminding me that's what so many women have said to me who are postmenopausal. They're like, I don't give a fuck years. It's so interesting to consider how many fucks were given before. that everyone feels such a relief when they're like, okay, I'm over that stage of my life now. Yeah.
Very much so. I think in your 40s becomes like you stop caring as much what people think. And then in your 50s, I'm 54, and it seems to be like not giving a rat's ass about getting permission for anything. It's more kind of like, it's my turn. What do I want? I get to have this, and I'm going to take it. You know?
I love it. Okay. So now let's talk about what you have seized in your so far in your 50s is writing this incredible book. And I want to talk about the ritual that you named your book after, Burn Your Shit. So what shit are we burning here? Are we burning like old love letters? Or are we burning our limiting beliefs, or what's happening here?
Yes. The one thing you're not burning is like big physical objects. Like you're not setting the sofa on fire. You're not throwing t-shirts in a fire pit or anything. But it's taking time to reflect and consider what is holding you back from stepping into your greatest self. What is holding you back from moving forward, or what is holding you back from healing? Like just any kind of blocks in your way. And it can be deep things like limiting beliefs or long held shame, but it could also be impatience with your kids, or some people would joke before, because we always write, I now choose to release. You're just writing on a slip of paper, I now choose to release whatever. I now choose to release anger towards this person, or shame around whatever. And then you light it on fire. And as it starts to, you read it aloud, I now choose to release la la la. You light it on fire. And as it starts to burn, you say, and so it is. And I now choose to release la 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 la. And so it is. And just seeing those words disappear before your eyes, it becomes... It's so empowering and cathartic, because you're becoming the author of your next chapter instead of a passive reader. You are placing yourself as the protagonist of your story, not someone else's sidekick. You are not being held back by the narratives of the past that you might have not even written. And what's really wild about this ritual in particular, Burn Your Shit, is that I've been leading and participating in moon rituals for decades. And during COVID, I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll do this on my front porch. And I would just have like my friends and my sister would be on the Instagram live. And I was like, all right. And there are just a few of us. And then what ended up happening was people, just word of mouth, whatever. And now I have to haul my cookies out on my front porch, regardless of the weather, because people are joining from Kenya, Kuwait, Italy, Australia, Mexico, like all over the place. And the feedback I get consistently is just because I also have people send me stuff to burn on their behalf, and I'll often combine them because there are so many similar ones around like financial scarcity, or my marriage, or feeling unlovable or unworthy. And so I'll combine them. And I also I call it freestyling, but it's like channeling. People will send me something. I'll be like, I think it's more like this. And what's wild is that someone from Finland will send me something to read. And then as I'm reading, I'm like, oh God, it's like I wrote it, and I'm burning it and I'm feeling it. And you're watching, on your phone or your computer, and you're like, oh God, this is really resonating. And it is much our release as it is Finland's release. Like because it is that collective where it's an online coven. And so it's this collective releasing and metabolizing of the bullshit that no longer serves us.
Okay. So Lori, I know that there's going to be at least one listener who gets a little, whoa, did she just say coven? And what the fuck is going on here? So can you just explain a little bit about like how it actually works? Like it's not like you burn a piece of paper and you're like, and there goes, I release all my bills. They're all paid. And so it is. So right. How does it really work?
Beautiful question. Una, thank you for asking that, because it's true. I get a lot of people like, I now choose to release Fred. Or I now choose to release debt. I now choose to release 10 pounds from my ass. And it's like, This is not fairy godmother stuff, guys. So instead of I now choose to release 10 pounds from my ass, how about I now choose to release being at war with my body?
Oh.
I now choose to release the bullshit belief that was instilled upon me by society and other people that I had to look a certain way to be lovable or worthy.
Oh, feel that. Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Instead of I now choose to release, I get so many, I now choose to release anxiety. It's like, if only, I'd be a millionaire. But I now choose to release the belief that anxiety is something that can be banished, and that all anxiety is bad. Some anxiety can propel us forward to make big moves and big decisions. not all, and so I now choose to release thinking that anxiety has to be absent before I can take the big move. I now choose to release obstacles that I put in my own way, to taking time for myself to just connect with my breath in ways that can help me reduce my own anxiety. See what I'm saying?
Oh, you're so good at rewriting it. Can you rewrite this one for me? Because I tried this this morning. Okay, wait, I have a question first. My first question is, are we always releasing a thought? Because I think every time you said you reframed it to a thought, is it always like something that's in our head that we are releasing?
No. So let's go back to Frank or Fred or however I named him. It's usually Frank, Fred, or Bob. But, instead of like I now choose to release Bob, it would be you write a whole ass letter to Bob, and Bob, dear Bob, you mother, whatever. You just say, just barf your brain, your heart, your soul onto the page. And then you read that letter aloud, or you read it to yourself, or once you've written it, that's it, you're one and done. And you hold it over your cauldron, which could be a frying pan or whatever you've got, be outside ideally, because it will stink up your house if you're lighting stuff on fire. And you just hold that letter aloft and you say, I now choose to release everything contained in this letter. And Bob, I release the bond we have in this lifetime and past lifetimes and future lifetimes. And I release the grip you have on my heart and the hold I have on yours. And I release you to a life of love and joy and prosperity and happiness, and myself the same. And then whatever else comes to mind, then you light that shit up. And as it starts to burn, you say, and so it is.
Oh, and Bob is done.
Right?
Yeah. And Bob's not done, but his power over you is done.
Done. Exactly. That connection is severed energetically because you have done a ritual with a very clear intention to do so. And that's what ritual does too. It helps you have agency in your life.
Right. So it's not that when we burn things, your anxiety is not going to go poof away, but it's going to sort of focus your brain in a different way. Is that what it's doing?
Yeah. It can sort of like knock you out of the loop that you've been in, the narrative that we tell ourselves over and over that isn't necessarily true. It's just what's known to us and what's comfortable. So it can just kind of like knock you off kilter in a good way. Or it can, again, empower you to realize like, oh, I can make these decisions for myself. Like so many people, I now choose to release my husband being so mean to me and being such a horrible person. Well, how about instead, I now choose to release thinking that I deserve scraps and that there's nothing better out there and that I am truly stuck because I can always make decisions and I can always make choices and I can always set boundaries.
Oh, I love your reframes. Okay. So I tried this this morning. I was like, I'm going to write my shit list. But here's a problem I had with it. I found it really hard to write things that I wanted to eliminate. Whenever I write down things that I want to change, I always want like more. I want like more money, more success. Yeah. Is that just me, or is it really common to have this like accumulation mindset versus a subtraction mindset?
Well, what you're doing, Una, is a new moon workshop because new moons, a full moon is really ideal for doing these release rituals because that's when the moon reaches the peak of its power and then it lets go. And then it starts to like release, right? And so we're harnessing those lunar vibes. You can do either of these rituals any day of the week, any time of day. It's fine. But doing it around, we just, it makes it a little sexier and we're harnessing those lunar vibes and it's not going to make it worse. So full moons are about releasing, letting go. That's when we burn our shit. New moons are about new cycles, new beginnings, fresh starts, bringing things in. That's manifesting. And so when it's like, oh, I am now ready to receive that amazing paycheck or that person who is worthy of me, who has done the work and has no mommy issues or whatever. And I now I'm now ready to receive whatever. And what often happens because I do a new moon workshop that's more, it's like a little paid thing on Zoom because I work one-on-one with people to help them like craft the intentions and identify the inspired actions that need to be taken towards them and sort of teach them the manifesting stuff that I was taught by the witch who mentored me on tarot a million years ago. And so what happens during that workshop when we're manifesting is often limiting beliefs bubble to the surface that we realize have to be burned under the full moon. So when you start thinking about, oh, I'm ready to receive this and this, but that'll never happen because blah, blah, blah. And well, I don't know if I could do that. Well, that seems a bit blah, blah. And they're like, oh, okay, there's something to put on a different piece of paper and I'll see you under the full moon to burn your shit. Or you could do it in the same ritual, but to just identify like the releasing and the bringing in, because I'm always saying in my readings, you have to pull the weeds so you can plant the seeds. We pull the weeds under the full moon, plant the seeds under the new moon. So you just might be mixing your moons a little bit, but it's all good.
Got it. Okay. So when I did identify some of the things I want to release, help me, because you're so great at rewriting them. Yeah. What I wrote down was judgment of myself.
Yeah. So how about something like, I now choose to release my compulsion and habit to treat myself worse than I would treat anyone else in my life that I love unconditionally.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I'm sure a lot of people felt that. Oh, that's awesome.
See the
it's
difference?
Very different.
Yeah,
it's great.
I love doing the reframing. It makes me happy. Like I'm there because I handwrite out everything. Like I get hundreds of them and I handwrite them out. And I mean, I combine them, right? And we don't always get to do all of them because it's growing bigger and bigger. And I don't want people on an Instagram live for like 5 hours. So it's usually about an hour. And doing that reframing just feels so good because I know how good it makes me feel to even just write it. Sometimes just writing it out is enough. And if someone's in an apartment or something where they can't be setting stuff on fire, even just being able to write it out can be very still cathartic.
Yeah. And you said every month of the ritual, people write in and you almost always have, there's themes, like there's almost always some body shame stuff. What are some other things that people are always writing in about?
Judgment, not feeling worthy, not feeling lovable, relationship issues, financial scarcity, a job they hate but feel stuck in, toxic relationships, whether it's family, coworkers, or romantic. Those sort of are the big ones. But then there's some, like someone will say, I want to release the grief that I'm feeling about so-and-so who died, within the last whatever. And I'll say, okay, well, we don't release grief. We don't move through grief even. I think we just learn to live with it. Like we adapt to the grief, because it's not something you get over, right? It's something that evolves and we transition into different stages and it takes a different form as we, as time goes by, but it's nothing that you can like bippity boppity boo and it's gone. So instead, it would be like, I now choose to release thinking that grief is something I have control over. And I now choose to release thinking that grief is something that has a schedule, and instead see it as a manifestation of the love that was there and is still there, and it's just being expressed differently.
Right. Right. Lori, I wanted to pick up on something you said earlier. So, for example, you said, but you can do any of these rituals at any time. And you don't have to burn it, really. And, in your book, you give all these super fun, like witchy information, like what crystals are good for what, and like what to do when the moon's in Sagittarius and all that sort of stuff. But then you also are really enabling and saying, and you can do a ritual at any time, and you can make a lipstick tube your magic wand if you want to. And I love that because it is so empowering, and it really reduces barriers that people would have, in doing this stuff. But I also wonder, like, is there a point where we're just kidding ourselves that we think we can like wave a big pen around and think that we've actually cleansed the room? Like, is there a point where we're kidding ourselves and it's not really meaningful? Or what are we losing if we don't do it on a full moon and with the magic stuff?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line for me is if it's not hurting anyone or making things worse, who cares? If you want to walk around waving around a lipstick, I mean, the lipstick thing was more a talking stick in a women's circle. I didn't have a wand handy or like a stick. So I just grabbed my lipstick and I was like, oh, this works. And in that moment, it worked. It was like something to hold that was like a talisman. It was something that was like a focal point, Same thing with smudging. People may not think it works, but it's not going to make things worse. And I have a lot of stories that I've heard and witnessed and experienced over the years that would indicate it absolutely works.
Yeah. You tell a great story. Can you tell a story about the break-in with the,
oh my God.
Was it sweetgrass?
So I was working with a naturopath friend, helping her in her office, and her office was in this long, narrow building. It was 2 levels, and there was just a hallway down the middle and office space on either side. And it was mostly therapists and, lawyers. It wasn't, diamond dealers or anything crazy. And she dealt with a lot of oncology patients, and the air was just really heavy. And I just asked her if I could smudge one Friday after she left early. And she said, yeah, knock your boots off, or knock your socks off. And then, so I did the smudging. It smelled like pot, like it smelled like a kegger had happened, because smudge, the sage can sometimes smell kind of like marijuana-ish. The accountant across the hall was just like, oh, brother, with this one. Like, you could tell he was a bit peeved. And then that was on a Friday. And then I got a call from her on Sunday that police had called her. There had been a break-in. Vandals had come in to the building. They had broken into one of the offices. They had totally just bashed it apart. They weren't even looking for equipment because no one had anything. Like, it was just, there was nothing there but like massage tables. My friend actually had the most expensive equipment, and they were going from office to office through the wall. They were bashing through the walls, putting holes in the wall to get from space to space, and just being destructive. And the only space they did not touch was her space that had been smudged, and the accountant across the hall who got a little secondary smoke. Yeah. Yeah. And the officers are like, we do not know why this happened, because it's like every other office got it.
And the best part about that is that the grumpy accountant attributed it to the smudging.
Yeah. He was just like, if you want to smudge, like, it's fine. Just, no big deal. It's no problem. Anytime.
It's so funny. And just for anyone who doesn't know, smudging, as I understand it, Lori, correct me if I get this wrong, it's when you burn sage or sweetgrass or both. And then you wave it around. Yeah, and it's like that energetic cleansing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the smoke is, it's an Indigenous practice. Palo Santo is something that's done with South American Indigenous people. And it's the smoke takes the negative energy in the space, and you have your windows open when you're smudging, so that as the smoke leaves, it takes all the bad mojo with it and delivers it up to Creator, where it is transmuted.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah. And I had a question about that practice, because you write, and this is a quote from your book, these are sacred Indigenous practices, and working with these as a new age trend is disrespectful. And Lori, like, I'm not asking you to be the ultimate authority on cultural appropriation or anything like that, but I'm curious, like, what is your opinion of appropriate ways for all of us to adapt to rituals that we have no ancestral or cultural claim to?
Right. I think that's such an important point to make. And the easiest way to do it is just to learn about it. Do a friggin' Google search on what is smudging, and learn about the origins of these practices. So you learn that, this is something that is Indigenous people have been doing for centuries, and it is their way to connect with Creator. And you learn about why you're doing it and what it is. That is one way to respect the ritual. And then another way to respect the ritual is to ideally buy from local Indigenous creators. If you can get smudge that is locally sourced rather than off of Amazon, like, God, don't do Amazon. It's probably made in some factory in like China or something, like it's the same thing with crystals too. Like, just know where you're getting these items from as much as you can. And to just not be, not be an asshole about it, like making, in terms of take it seriously, because it's a serious practice. And if you're doing it because you want to benefit from it, then take it seriously. It doesn't mean you can't like have a giggle about it, but to just like, this is a sacred, solemn kind of, it would be like, taking out a trombone in church, like, just,
or communion wafers and doing something weird with them. Like, maybe not your religion, but
noises in confession or something like, oh God, read the room, guy. Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Awesome. Okay. That, on this podcast, we talk about setting goals, and I'm wondering, in your opinion, what is the difference between manifesting and goal setting?
I think manifesting is more magical. Rituals will never guarantee an outcome. They're not magic, but they can be magical, and they can absolutely support you in reaching your goals. and bringing things to bear that you making your, becoming the designer of your dreams. And so goal setting could be like, okay, I'm going to run a marathon. And so I'm going to do this many, miles or kilometers or whatever every day. And I'm going to do this. And you just, have your spreadsheet and you track it and you're doing all the thing, and great. But then if you maybe have a little, a certain route that you take, and you have a certain drink or breakfast or something after your big runs, that is, you're doing that because it's this moment for you to just like reflect on, what you've accomplished and how far you've gone, and just kind of take that moment. Do you see how it's sort of a little bit more meditative, a bit more intentional, rather than just like, not just like checklist?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, like, for example, the goal, like for this book, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is something, would you say it was a goal that you set, or would you say it is something that you manifested?
Girl, it's both. And let me tell you about the manifesting of this. I'm now in a full sweat just talking about it, because I did not plan to write this book at all. I had written a book about tarot that started as a PDF document for a workshop that I filmed on Zoom that I was going to sell on my website. And then I started expanding the book to include like anecdotes, and it was this different take on tarot. And then I started thinking, wow, this could maybe be like a book instead of a PDF. And I thought, wow, maybe I could publish this, like self-publish this. And this is going on over months as I'm finishing the book. And then I started thinking, God, what if I got an agent? What if I try to get an agent? Like, I'm a writer, I have freelance writing background, I could do this. And then, querying the agents and doing the work to research them and getting a book proposal together that was like top notch, and getting it critiqued to make sure it was up to snuff. And so I'm putting in the work for sure, but I'm also starting to expand my intention. And I always say that the key to manifesting, it's intention and then inspired action, and then just kind of step back and let life respond and see what shows up. So my intention was there, and I was imagining myself opening the box, seeing the book, and I couldn't see the cover or what it was called or anything, but that idea of like opening a box, being like, oh my God. And so I'm doing all of that, right? I'm having those visualizations and all that stuff. That's the difference between goal setting too, is the visualizing or the journaling or the letting your imagination get involved, right? And then I'm taking the inspired action. I'm reaching out to agents, I'm querying and everything. And then I get the agent. She gets publisher meetings. And I always say, when I write down intentions, I always put like, let's say July 2024 intentions. And then underneath that, I write this or something better, because I don't want to limit myself, because I don't know what I don't know. Right. So let's do this or something better. And so I had this meeting with HarperCollins, and they were like, yeah, tarot books are interesting, whatever, but like, tell us about the rituals, or like the burn your shit thing, not rituals. They said, what about this burn your shit thing? Because that was in your nonfiction proposal. And as a marketing thing, so you have to write about that kind of stuff. And 2 days before it had been a full moon, and they popped on Instagram and seen me do Burn Your Shit on Instagram Live. And so I was like, oh, let me tell you about Burn Your Shit. Blah, 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 blah. And then I said, oh, by the way, that's actually book 2's idea, because I had done the work, and a friend of mine had said, make sure you go in with a book 2 idea, because you don't want to be a one-trick pony. So I went in saying, oh, I'm totally... going for it I'm going for rituals as a subject for my next book, even though it hadn't been started yet. And they were like, ooh, tell us more. And then that's what got me the book deal to do Burn Your Shit and the tarot book. I got a 2-book deal with HarperCollins. Thank you very much.
Right.
And that is something that was not on my bingo card.
Right.
So do you see how the difference?
Yeah, I guess goal setting seems more like heady, strategic, it's ticking boxes, it's kind of a grind, and it's a checklist, and God knows we all have a lot of checklists, whereas manifesting is more like playful curiosity, it's co-creation, it's like bouncing off what you're getting. Does that seem like
it's intention, inspired action, and having faith that universe has better plan for you than you have for yourself, and that if you just sit and watch it, like because I'm really great at setting intentions and taking inspired action, and then I would be like, ugh, it hasn't happened yet, screw this, and okay, what about that thing? Intention, inspired action, why isn't it happening? Forget it. Like I needed to work. That's my life's journey, is to work on the letting go and surrendering the need to control the outcome of it all. And there are a lot of corporations who do rituals called team building or called check-ins, They're rituals. And they're even starting to talk about it. In my research, I found a lot of corporate speak, a lot of Harvard Business Review stuff is about the power of ritual for team performance, like individual and team performance is absolutely, positively, scientifically proven to be impacted by ritual.
I bet. It's funny when you were talking about the letting go. I had a friend the other day who said the thing that people are getting wrong about manifesting is that the energy they're giving out is like they're a toddler kicking and screaming in the grocery store because the universe hasn't given them Doritos yet. And that's the energy you're giving off. And so no one wants to give that brat Doritos.
That's what I always say. So many people, I have a problem with things like The Secret. That thing bugs me. And, the law of attraction, I believe in the law of attraction, but how people, you just get a bunch of dinglings in front of their vision board that are like, oh, when is it happening? Why haven't I moved to Paris? Like they feel like it's fairy godmother stuff. And it's like, no, guys, that's not how it works. It's the intention and the inspired action.
Yeah.
Like,
so, okay.
Inspired.
Yeah. So, inspired action. So, we also talk about grit on this podcast, in which I define as the growth that happens when you push through obstacles that are on the way to your goals. So is there any sort of grit required in manifesting, or is there a spiritual equivalent of grit?
I think the idea of surrendering the need to control the outcome is grit. Right?
That's hard.
Because
that's hard.
I know, but because it's something that is so ephemeral and intangible. It's not like, going to going to a boot camp and sweating it out and doing the grind and that, I feel the definition in my muscles. Like, it's not that, right? It's just that winging a prayer, hope it's working, it's so intangible, and it's that faith. And that, I think that there can be grit that comes with faith, and that it can be a lot more difficult than a boot camp class. It's like,
yeah, it's funny. I'm noticing my body reaction to that is
Your
like
faith
most people's would be if I was like, all you got to do is 1,000 burpees. They'd be like, oh, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And you saying you just got to have faith. I'm like, oh, I don't like that.
Spiritual burpees.
Yes, totally. Yeah. So you say your tagline is woo woo without the cuckoo. So what is the cuckoo, and what is the difference between woo woo and cuckoo for you?
Right. So I say that, especially before I do any kind of tarot event, whether it's especially larger events or, parties and things, I say, listen, I just like to start by saying my tagline is woo without the cuckoo, because it gives people a sense of what I'm about. I take it very seriously. This is, the woo woo is the spiritual, the unknown, the tarot of it all, the psychic, the channeling of it all. It's what I do for a living, and I've been doing it for over 3 decades, but I'm not goofy about it. I'm not going to be saying, say goodbye to the dog. I'm not going to be giving goofy predictions like you're going to meet Frank at the Starbucks on Tuesday. That's ridiculous. I'm not a medical medium. Like, you can tell people, check your pancreas, or you're going to be a librarian. I'm not doing predictions. I'm not doing fortune telling. That's, the cliches of tarot reading in particular, but, psychics in popular culture of the fortune teller with the bangles and the scarves, and she's nuts, and one of her eyes is traveling all over the place, and she's just like wackadoo. That's not me, and it's never been me. I'll never be like Mystic Mandy at the psychic fair. I've never been to a psychic fair in my life, So I see tarot as a tool. I see rituals as a tool, and my mission is to inspire, empower, and enlighten people, and to help them help themselves. So whether it's through tarot or rituals or whatever it does, it's very, kind of woo-woo magical seeming stuff. I give readings all the time, and people are like, oh my God, it's like you peel back my skull and you're like, look, how do you know all this stuff? But I'm not saying specific things. It's wild. It's
They're
like
hearing
specific
things.
I don't know. I always say it's, especially with the readings, it's like, I always say it's like having a conversation with your soul, and I'm just the interpreter. So I'm seeing how these cards are working together to tell the story of you, but I don't know anything about you. Oh, well, we're going to pull a card, right? Can we pull a card before I started this?
Yes. Can we?
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm like, why don't I just show you? Obviously. Okay. I mean, my cards are right out. So you're going to hear me knock the deck, because I do that to start everything. And now you hear me shuffle. I'm just going to get your mojo in here by staring at you super awkwardly. Whoops. Ooh, card flew out. Interesting. We'll see if that comes out. Sometimes it's just, I've been doing readings all day, so I'm just being lazy. So I'll just ask, what does Una need to know right now? Oh, it's so funny. You're going to just be like, ugh. And then if you want, you can ask a question after and we can pull another card. But the card you got was justice, which for me is all about karmic justice. It's reminding you how karma is the ebb and flow of the tide. So what you're putting out is what you're getting back. You put out best efforts and intentions, it will return to you. Not when you want, because we want it yesterday. It won't look how you thought it would, because it never does, but it will come back to you, whether it's wealth, health, career, love, home, family, one or many areas of life. It's that very basic idea that output and effort is what yields results. And it's so funny because of who you are and what you do, but this is the example I give. I'm very intentional about my words, and there's always channeling and going, off-roading, but there are certain core messages I deliver for every card and every reading. And I always say in this reading, it's like if I got a Peloton and decided I'm going to be on this thing 5 hours a day, I'm going to get in the best goddamn shape of my life, but then I'm popping Doritos the whole time, that's going to be reflected back at me, So it's just... And also that karma's like a farmer. It's not sexy, no shortcuts, no gimmicks, no workarounds. It's just get up, show up, do the work, and wait for that harvest to come in. Probably not on your timeline. And it's one of 2 cards in the deck I call a cranky grandpa card, because in my head it's an old man voice, kind of like a Clint Eastwood type going, kid, get up, put your boots on, stop farting around, get to work. So it's like a little kick in the ass from yourself to yourself.
That I feel is the grit card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it speaks to your ethos,
right?
Of you as a person and a brand, right? But
right.
Also, in terms of like the shoemaker's kids going barefoot, maybe you needed to hear someone else tell you that.
All right. So you guys all got a little spiritual bitch slap from Lori there. And
Tara loves to drag. Tara loves to just be like, oh, we got your number, baby. Like it does it to me all the time, where half the time I'm like, fuck you, Tara. God damn it. How dare you tell me what I need to know? Yeah. Did you want to ask something, or are you good with that? You tell me.
No, I think with that, I think I have to let that sit.
Yeah. Okay.
But listen, I know that everyone's going to be listening to this and they're like, whoa, where do I contact the tarot reader who says, fuck you, tarot? So please, Lori, tell everybody how they can participate in your rituals, where they can buy your book, Burn Your Shit, The Life-Changing Magic of Ritual, and where they can also get a tarot reading from you.
Yeah, for sure. So my book is available wherever you get your books. It's published through HarperCollins, so Amazon, Indigo, local bookstores, indie bookstores, anywhere. And my website is tarotlori.com, and that's where you can sort of see more about doing parties, events, one-on-one readings. I do them in person. One-on-one readings are done exclusively on Zoom now. I think people are more open energetically when they're in their own space, and it also allows me to be a lot more efficient. So there aren't huge wait lists. And I'm most active on Instagram, just at tarot.lori, TAROT.LORI. And I do a card of the day every weekday morning, like a little tarot scope. I do the Burn Your Shit on Instagram Live. Anyone can pop in every full moon, 8 p.m. Eastern. And then you'll hear about other rituals I'm doing and stuff there too.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed our conversation so much, Lori. Thank you.
Me too. This has been a blast. Thank you.
Hey, dude, I hope you liked that conversation. I liked Lori so much. But you know what's funny? I got a little weird when she pulled that judgment card for me. And I'm blushing again. And she told me about how what you put in is what you get out. I felt like she was exposing me for not working hard enough in front of you. And so I was like, okay, moving on, Lori, no questions. Fuck you, tarot. And after we stopped recording, I told her, and she clarified, like, oh my God, dude, that is not what that card means. And we both agreed that it's pretty interesting that was my reaction. Which, by the way, is always the most interesting thing. And if you can get curious about your reactions instead of getting caught up in them, there is such an opportunity for self-awareness. For example, at my last retreat, we were sitting around, we were discussing the podcast, and one woman said she normally loves the podcast, but she had a really strong negative reaction to the one about polyamory, which is episode 18, if you're curious. But she didn't say like, I like all your podcasts except for that one. That one was gross. What she said is, I noticed that I had a really strong reaction to it. And I wonder why I felt so uncomfortable by something that no one is forcing me to do. So Listen, dude, whether it's a podcast episode or a tarot card or glancing at your clock and seeing that it happens to be 11:11, could be a sign. And not necessarily like it's a sign that the universe is trying to tell you something, but it's a sign that you noticed it and had a reaction. And therefore you are trying to tell you something. As always, I want to hear what you think. And if an episode about ritual and tarot cards or any episode gives you a strong reaction, I want to hear about it. My DMs are always open, and I will see you next week. Hey, dude, thanks for listening. If you like this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you can get the next one. And by the way, if you rate and review this podcast, it really helps me get found by other people who need some goals, grit, and some woo-woo shit. And be sure to connect and DM me at Una Duncan on Instagram and let me know what you thought of the episode. Chat soon.